publicly on GRT, probably most likely Scan's YouTube channel, but it might be sent out to different listservs. So just so that you know, anything that's in the chat won't be transcribed and shared. So feel free to share as you would like to. It's just going to be the video portion that we'll share out. I already said this, but feel free to use your camera or not. So we'll be doing some things like stretching or breath techniques. And if you don't feel comfortable having people see you, then yeah, feel free to block it or unblock it as you'd like throughout our training. What else? Let's see. The structure of our training is going to be a little bit of PowerPoint presentations that we'll have going throughout the training. And that's really just to have a visual for you to see some of the things that we're talking about. And then Rachel and I will do some role playing. So you'll see our acting skills then. And we'll also do some experiential things with you all. So the way that we sort of structured this training is that it's going to be almost like a mock schedule, if you will. So we'll start with, like, for example, how can you check in with your child in the morning when you first wake up? And then we'll end with some attunement activities you can do before bed and just kind of put things in between there. I just want to give a disclaimer that this may not match at all what you do during the day, and that's completely fine, right? This is really just the way that we felt we could structure the training. But feel free to use any of the things that we discuss or share at any time throughout the day. You'll know it fits your family best. And we also know that because there's tons of people on the call from different places that some of these things may work for you and they may not, right? So there's different family structures on the calls, different backgrounds, different comfortability levels. So just the way what we're sharing right now is really just what we've shared and learned professionally. Both of us work with caregivers in our roles, so it's things we've taught to caregivers before. So yeah, just take what you need, leave what you don't. Do you want to add anything with that, Rachel?
Yeah, I think that's a great segue into just, thinking about our goals for today, and exactly what Margo said. Margo and I kind of came together to think about our work that we do professionally with caregivers and what we're seeing right now that maybe are some things that caregivers need. And what we want you all to take away from this training at the very least is that caregiver self-care is incredibly important during this time. That this, stressor of COVID-19, in addition to just general daily stressors and the added stressors that are coming in for a lot of folks from, work, professional, requirements, school closings, social isolation, all of these things are impacting, right, our brain and our body, and how we're practicing self-care, but also just how calm and relaxed we can be when you have kids maybe in your home 24/7 and you're not getting the breaks or the different kind of, all your self-care practices that you usually may use may not be as right now. So, exactly what Margo said is that, a lot of these things may feel, maybe some of which will be applicable to you, some of which won't. Our hope is that at least you can walk away with a few new skills or even just a new perspective of, how much caregiver self-care matters, and how important it is for the whole family unit, children, co-partners, other folks in the home, as well as yourself. So our goal for this training is really just to share those things with you and just discuss kind of those strategies that you can incorporate into your own family's, routine and rituals throughout the day.
Awesome. So we're going to get started with some slides, but before we're going to share our screen with you. And yes, I saw a question about PowerPoint being shared. We will share the PowerPoint. So feel free to, just be engaging in this real time, and you don't have to take notes unless you want to. Before we do, I'm going to start us with a breath. If you were in my training last week, self-care wasn't specifically for families, but you might remember this breath. It's really good for focus. So since we're going to get into some PowerPoints, figure we could do some focus breathing. I'm going to back up my computer so you can see. You follow it with a mudra. And so it's 4 breaths. We'll take 4 short. We touch our 4 fingers with our thumb, right? So thumb to pointer, thumb to middle, thumb to ring finger, thumb to pinky. And then we'll exhale doing it backwards. So it'll look like this. Make sense? Okay, so feel free to join me if you'd like to. We'll take 3, let's take 5 of them. Last one. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Okay, so some of you may have noticed you might actually even feel a little lightheaded, kind of forcing a little more oxygen into the brain, which will help with our focus. I'll get into that too, how you can use that with an affirmation a little bit later. Hopefully I remember to do that. Okay, so some of these slides again are going to be a little bit repetitive from last week if you joined last week. This is just meant to be a review of why this is important. You've heard of the term paper tiger. You will already know what I'm talking about, but if you haven't, I just wanted to briefly bring it up as I think it really pertains to what we're experiencing right now. So on the left, you'll see a picture of the real tiger, and on the right, a drawing of a pretty scary looking tiger. And on the left, the real tiger is going to represent for us a threat of safety for self or someone close to us. So, for example, if there was a tiger in the room with us, we might feel a sense of threat to our own safety or those that are with us, right? And then, so for us right now in this time period, it could be very much related to the coronavirus, right? Having the virus ourselves, knowing somebody who has the virus whose life may be threatened right now. It could also mean, for some of the folks that I'm working with, people in your home that you may be quarantined with, that you're kind of stuck with for a while, may not be safe people. So could be, threat of potential safety for yourself or others just by the people that you're with right now. The paper tiger is not a threat to your physical safety necessarily, but it triggers the same response. So I'll get into that in a second. But this might be, for example, a fight you may have with your spouse or partner, or your child drops a glass of water and sort of like has that jerk reaction. It's not a threat to our safety, but our body doesn't know the difference between a real tiger and a paper tiger. So a lot of times it'll respond the same way. For example, if a glass of water spilled, I might jump, right? Sort of like having that hypervigilance of like, I need to be aware, startled by a noise. Some of the biological things that happen when we're sort of in our downstairs brain, which I'll show in a second, and feeling unsafe is that our heart rate might start to increase, our palms might get sweaty. It may mean that our pupils dilate so that we can see more clearly what's around us. Our digestion actually might slow down depending on how long we're in that state. And the leftover acid in our stomach actually makes us feel nauseous, right? So some of you have probably felt this way, like if you've ever had to present, right? You might feel a little bit nervous, your palms might get sweaty, you may feel a little nauseous in the stomach. That's sort of like that paper tiger, right? It's not my safety isn't being compromised, hopefully, but the body doesn't know the difference. It responds biologically the same way. And that's what's taking place involuntarily in this red section. This is a picture of the brain, Becky Bailey's conscious discipline visual here, in this red section of our brain, right? So it's that survival. And it's asking very first, when it's taking any sort of sensory information in from the outside, am I safe? Right? So a glass falling on the table might make a sound that may make you feel you're not safe, right? And then you notice that it's water. Okay, I'm safe. Now I'm going to move to the blue part of my brain, right? My limbic system, which is more focused on emotion. So these two parts make up what Dr. Dan Siegel calls the downstairs brain. And if you're familiar with his hand model of the brain, I'll go over that in just a second, and Rachel will, in just a second, we'll stop sharing so that I can show you on a larger screen the hand model. But the third part I want to go over before that is the executive state, the prefrontal lobe. So this is like right at the top of our brain. It doesn't fully develop until we're, 25 or so. And this is what we're hoping that we are using most of the time when we're using logic and reasoning, and it helps to regulate the downstairs brain. So blue and red, downstairs brain, green is our upstairs brain. So Rachael, if you want to stop the share for a moment, I'll show you the hand model of the brain, just really quickly. So if you take out your hand, you can follow along with me if you'd like. You can put your thumb in your palm and 4 fingers over your thumb, and this is your brain, right? And if you open up your 4 fingers, this part down here is representative of your downstairs brain, those lower sections I just talked about. So am I safe? Am I loved? And then 4 fingers over thumb, this is that higher level thinking, using logic and reasoning to make decisions. And the way I've described it to young kids is it's helping to calm your downstairs brain when we're feeling regulated. And so it kind of looks like it's giving your thumb a little bit of a hug, right? So your upstairs brain is calming down your downstairs brain. So Dr. Dan Siegel calls it when we are not thinking with our upstairs brain using logic and reasoning that we've flipped our lid, right? So a lot of you have probably heard this before. He's got great resources on YouTube if you just look up Dr. Daniel Siegel, hand model of the brain. And so he'll actually use this as a signal with kids if they're starting to notice, or if he's noticing himself become a little, I'm agitated, I'm stressed, or I'm actually feeling threatened, my safety, then my lid is flipped. Make sense? So this has been really useful to, I've taught this to clients probably as young as 5 or 6, this about their brain, really basically like that. And the reason why I'm sharing it with you all, even if you don't share it with your kids or in your profession with those you work with, is just to know that we're probably more likely nowadays in this downstairs brain, because we're experiencing not only the real tigers, but some paper tigers, all of the social media, news outlets, things like that, that are exposing us to a lot of things that can potentially flip our lid. And of course, all the added stress that we're having at home if we're managing homeschooling and multiple kids, and if you're a single parent, and all of those things. So I just wanted to go over that. Rachael, I think you can go back to the PowerPoint, but I wanted to give you a good visual of the hand model of the brain. And I think that's it.
Cool. So just to go off of what Margo was just sharing with you all, I think when we talk about caregiver self-care and, the importance of that, not only just for the caregiver themselves, but also the family unit, is it really is almost like a cyclical reaction, where here on the slide on the left, you have a caregiver that's filling themselves up throughout their day. They're experiencing lots of stressors, so many things that are not in our control right now. And certain families that may have even more and more stressors of, childcare, needing to still go to work for financial reasons, not being able to practice social distancing in the way that they would like, all of these different barriers, right? But if feeding into themselves throughout the day in the ways that Margo and I are going to share soon helps to let that glass fill up, right? Filling them, their own selves up, working with a glass half full, right? Than half empty. And what that enables the caregiver to do is then to kind of pour in to their child's glass that you can see on the bottom left in this circle diagram. So therefore the child, right, is responding well to that caregiver having their lid flipped down, right, their thinking brain on. And so when the child starts to get maybe stressed by all the changes they're experiencing, that caregiver is able to keep their thinking logical brain on as well and fill that child's cup up too. Now on the right, what happens is we see that when a caregiver isn't supporting themselves, filling themselves up, maybe practicing some of the skills we may offer you all today, it's really hard, right, to fill up your child. And it's hard to, be able to respond with that thinking, calm brain to something that your child is stressing about, right? Or the challenging behaviors, the I want this, or the no's, right? All of those things can cause the caregiver to start to flip their lid, right? Because they have less to work with in their self-care bank, and that's causing the child to flip more as well. And so all of that then leads to, the child being so kind of, reactive to that caregiver stress that it's almost like a vicious cycle, right? The caregiver stressing, lid flipping, the child flipping, and that continues over and over. So we kind of end up in this cyclical sort of process. So our hope today really is to think about caregiver self-care in terms of a lot of these different strategies and words that we'll talk more about, of attachment, attunement, connecting with your child throughout the day. Not that we know that caregivers even may have an hour right now to spend with themselves, in alone time, but how can you dip in and fill yourself up throughout the day so you don't end up empty and your lid's not flipping and causing, all of this stress to build up and the whole family to be kind of, left empty at the end of the day. Do you have anything to add to that, Margo?
No, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I think our next slide is going to be our feelings, right, Rach?
Yeah, if you wanted to do, yes, feelings, thank you. Okay.
Perfect. Okay. So this is sort of how most of the slides will look, right? It'll just have some suggestions, and we'll go through them, and then we're going to choose. We've chosen one to do out of each of them, to either role play or we'll experience it together. So feeling check-ins. I mentioned I work a lot with teachers. So this is kind of like, when kids are coming into school and they're checking in at the beginning of the day. Similar to that, for you all, for caregivers at home, this could mean at any point, right? When your child wakes up, during breakfast, right before you transition to another part of the day. But really helpful, another of Dan Siegel's strategies is called name it to tame it. And so actually just naming out loud or on paper how we're feeling can help to tame that feeling. So it's actually really useful to share how you're feeling. So one way you could do this is just choose a word to describe how you're feeling right now. And I'll just share that how you're feeling right now can be an important part of that prompt, because I don't know about you all, but my feelings have changed pretty drastically throughout the day, right? So how are you feeling today might not fit as well as how you're feeling right now, right? And then you can use that throughout the day. How are you feeling right now? So one word or two to describe how you're feeling.
And then another idea that we can offer you all is with the preschoolers that I work with, but also even just for myself, it can be nice to kind of have a face, right, that matches up with the feeling word that we're trying to identify. And we know that oftentimes it's not just one feeling that we have. We can, as adults, right, we can be excited that we get to work from home. If you're able to do that because you get more time with your kids, but you can also feel really frustrated that you have so much time with your kids and that you're having to attend to their needs all the time. So I offer like this, and there's links, and we'll send this out in the PowerPoint that we follow up with in the email after the training, is that just these like affect faces, we call them, are at the bottom of the slide. Printing those out, or even just having them pulled up on your phone and looking at them yourself, say, I'm going to pick out some faces that I'm feeling right now. Or in the morning, having that kind of print out and having your child color them in to which ones they may be feeling. Just a way to kind of identify, how am I starting this day right now, and what feeling or feelings am I feeling in this moment?
The third one is on a scale from 1 to 10. So typically when I've asked folks, and we'll do this actually together after we go through this slide, as I'll give a choice. So sometimes I'll say, describe how you're feeling with a word, or I'll say, pick a number between 1 and 10, how you're feeling right now, 10 being the best you've ever felt.
And then also another way to do it, offering you guys just ways that feel most comfortable to you and your family, is you can do, show me with a sound and a movement how you're feeling right now. So for me, I could do something like this, like, where I'm, implying like, I feel like I am running in place right now, and I just feel, like I don't even have words, right? And it's kind of bringing some humor to the fact that like our feelings may be pretty complex and confusing right now. But kind of, getting our body moving and kind of engaging that other side of the brain of, what does this feeling move like? What does this feeling sound like? And kind of a fun way to just do, check in with your kids in that way about feelings.
And you've probably already noticed that some of these are easier to do with older kids versus younger kids, right? So the sound and the movement's really nice for a younger kid who may not have the language to tell you with a word how they're feeling right now. Same with feeling faces, really nice to have a visual for younger kids if they're not sure. And I like this visual a lot because it pairs it with the word so they can start to learn affect that way as well. So this last one is notice your body. Which parts of your body feel good today? Which parts of your body may need some attention? This is, it could be for really any age, depending on what they know about how any work they've done with how noticing parts of their body. But for example, I notice when I'm stressed that my shoulders start to get tense. And until I notice that, I can't really relax them, right? I'm not sure what to do about that. So checking in with the body to notice how feelings may be manifesting in our body so that we can release them. Okay, I'm gonna roll my shoulders out because now I notice that they're a little bit tight, can be really helpful and actually start to, it could invite an opportunity for you and your child to do something together. Oh, your shoulders are feeling tight? Okay, well, let's roll them out together. Well, you know what? My legs are feeling a little restless, so let's do a little running in place, right? So it can help you to actually then move towards something that you can do together.
Do you want to move on?
Oh, yeah, okay. So we're gonna practice. And again, we did this last week. If you were there last week, you'll remember that we're gonna check in with the chat feature. So if you're familiar with the chat feature and you'd like to use it, go ahead and click on the chat feature and you'll see that pop up. And we're gonna check in with our feelings for right now. So right now with a word or two, or a number between 1 and 10, 10 being the best you've ever felt. How are you feeling right now? Awesome. Yeah, and then those who can see their chat, go ahead and just see what other folks are sharing. There's another amazing thing about this is that sharing our feelings often creates connection because we notice that we're not alone in our feelings. So I'm seeing lots of feelings that are very similar and numbers that are very similar. Great, take about 10 more seconds. If you feel like you'd like to share, go ahead and do that. Awesome. All right, so that's your first strategy. Thank you all for participating in that.
And Margo, I think we were chatting too of just, it can be hard to think about implementing a new activity even right now. I see a lot of folks saying, overwhelmed, tired, stressed, right? So the idea of like, oh, I'm gonna print out faces and have my kids do this every morning, that may feel like just simply too much right now. And I think just the simplest version of this, like, feelings check-in is just waking up in the morning and just having a brief moment to check in with yourself, notice your body. Notice maybe just throughout the day, thinking, my kid's acting a little bit different today, or they're harder to manage. What is that feeling that's underneath there? Not that we have to have an activity or a conversation even about it, but just connecting is that way of providing that sense of safety, I think, and helps our own brains kind of empathize with our kids. Oh, like, I don't need to get so worked up about this hard behavior right now because I can understand a little bit maybe more of what's like lying underneath the surface, both of myself and my kid. All right, so we're going to transition now to transitions. I meant to make that joke, so hope you like it.
Pun intended. All right. So transitions. Hopefully this is normalizing for you all that are taking on school and doing homeschool with your kids right now. When I was working for a school system, still work with multiple school systems, and hearing from teachers what's the hardest part of the day for your students, it was 99% of the time always transitions. And what I mean by transition, it could literally mean transitioning to one place to a different place. It could be from seated at a desk or a table to sitting on a rug. It could mean transitioning from doing some schoolwork to eating lunch. Any sort of transition is what we're capturing here. And the reason why that can be a difficult time for kids is because typically there's not a whole lot of structure around transition. It's like, okay, it's time to go, or it's just time to move on. And the structure can sometimes feel, a little anxious because we're not really sure what's happening next, or we don't want to finish what we were just doing. So some of these suggestions might help to decrease that anxiety and prepare for a transition that's coming. So the first one I have here is change the physical space that you're in, right? Like verbalizing the space boundary out loud. So if you're transitioning from breakfast to now we're gonna, feed the dog, or we're gonna start some schoolwork, or whatever is gonna happen, it's just saying, okay, we're gonna leave the kitchen table and leave breakfast here and move on to whatever it is, right? So, and maybe it's a different room in the house or space in the house, if you can make that happen, to just kind of, this is where we do schoolwork, this is where we eat, this is where we sleep. The physical boundary of that can help to lessen some anxiety around that transition.
Yeah, and when we, we're going to offer like a little role play at the end of this to kind of show these activities more, just to keep that in mind as we're talking. But, I think as adults, we struggle, right, with having to, with doing something we enjoy, right? Having fun on the weekend, or, doing, watching our favorite TV show, and then having to be called away from that, right? And move into something that we don't necessarily want to do, or even if it's just something else that someone's telling us we need to do right then. That could, what Margo was saying, it increases our anxiety, and it's kind of like, whoa, like, I don't want to change my ideas right now. Like, I like exactly what I'm doing. So thinking of this idea of stop, breathe, and think helps us to pause, breathe, and then move on. Oftentimes I see with both, with a lot of adults in general, is that we kind of rush to well, we need to get going, or we got to do this. They kind of are wanting to move forward because they realize we should have been somewhere. Or, oh, I didn't realize you were spending an hour on your tablet already. Like, you got to get the homework, right? And we jump to the verbal so quickly without stopping, breathing, kind of as the picture shows on the right, and then thinking or using our verbal skills to kind of direct in any way. So that's just kind of a little mantra that I remind myself of like, whew, I got to breathe first before I rush into the transition part of, we got to move on to this next thing.
The next one is wipe off old stuff. This is one of my favorite things. When I transition from my day job to my evening job, I literally do this when I walk into the door of my evening job, right? This can be really helpful for younger kids too, because you actually you're like wiping yourself off, like ridding yourself of whatever was just happening. It's also really nice for repairing. So if you're feeling like maybe you had an interaction that you were like, oh shoot, my lid was flipped, or I really didn't mean to say that. I've used it as a repair too, of after I've apologized or whatever it is, okay, let's just wipe that experience off. Let's all wipe it off together. And you can go all the way down to your legs, top of your head, you can wipe each other off, whatever feels appropriate. And actually, that tapping on our body helps to regulate us too. So it kind of hits all sorts of things, humor, disconnection, and really the tapping of the body to help rid ourselves of what we don't need.
Yeah, and I think it's so much an important piece, Margo, right, of, allowing ourselves to make those mistakes, that it's impossible, right, to never have our lid flip, especially during a transition that can be so challenging for kids and, with adults. And so, I think just in allowing that your child or your own self to be like, hey, I had a hard moment too, but I'm going to wipe it off. I think that repair piece that you just said is such an important part of that. When thinking about stop, breathe, and think as well, we move on to like first then statements. So when you are offering, when you have taken that moment to breathe and calm with your child, it is helpful when you do give them the verbal instruction to really, especially for little kids, but even for older children as well, of using a first then statement. So for the child who says, well, I want to play my tablet now, right? First we do our homework, then we'll play the tablet. So it's rather than saying, no, we're not going to do your idea, it's offering that, first it will be my idea as the grown up, but then we'll give your idea a turn. So a lot of kids hear no as, oh, that's never going to happen. So a first then statement can really help them to believe that you're listening to them, validating that you will do what they want to do, just first you'll do your idea first.
And it also helps to create the structure, right? So if they are worried about what's going to happen after we do that, then you can make it as small or as big as you want, right? So first, we'll do our work, then we can have a break. Could be one. You could even simplify it as first we'll stand up, then we'll push in our chair. First we'll walk to the the room we're doing our work in, then we'll find a seat. It can be really, really as much as you need, right? As much as you're seeing that it's in, you can structure it that way. Okay, and then breathing. So this is one of my favorite breaths. The picture is a flower candle breath. So if you don't have a flower and big flower, real flower, or candle at your house, I just use a pencil sometimes, right? So I'll ask kids, this is great for younger kids. When I used to teach preschool, this is what I used. So you'll use pencil. Okay, what flower is your favorite flower? Okay, a rose. Okay, let's smell the rose. And then let's pretend we have a birthday candle and blow our candle out. And I might flip it over, blowing the candle out. So for young kids that don't understand, take a deep breath, right? Or breathe in, breathe out. This really helps to make it a little bit more relatable and able for them to do. So smell the flower and blow out the candle. Smell the flower, blow out the candle. Like that. And then there's several other ones, obviously. We're going to go through, I think, Rachel, we have more of them coming up. But there's all sorts of things. I mean, even the one I did in the beginning, maybe better for older kids or for adults. And then there are some that are sort of, it just depends on what your child takes to. So we'll go over more of those.
I think a piece of the breathing also is I work with some kids who are like, I will never breathe for you. No matter what you say, I am never going to breathe when I'm feeling upset. So that's why we're going to offer, a lot of strategies for you all, because some kids may not like it, or you may not like, the breathing part of it. So another piece of this is giving labeled praise, shifting our focus to the positive and help, kind of validate for the child what they are doing well, right? And that important piece of it being labeled. So when a child does finally listen, right? I get caught up in this myself where thanks for listening, but I wish you had done it the first time, right? Or you did a great job, but it took you like 10 more minutes than it should have, right? Because there's that piece of us that wants the kid to know, like, hey, I had to be really patient while you kind of worked through that. So I think as much as we can kind of fill ourselves up so that we, feel, whew, I can feel calm right now, even though my kid took a while to get that done, I can praise them and say, thank you for listening, period, right? So that their focus is going to the positive behavior, right? And you're modeling to them how to move forward, right? How to wipe off that old stuff and move forward through the interaction, and not dwelling in what they could have done better, what they should have done, things like that. And using that labeled praise phrase of thanks for listening, thanks for helping, thank you for being so kind to your sister, right? To really focus their attention on what is doing well. And it also helps us feel better because then we're like, oh, my kid is doing that really well. Like that's a more uplifting perspective, right? Than what is so natural to us as just humans in general to focus on the negative and what we wish would have gone better.
And I'll just add to that, by framing it in the positive, we're not even saying anything in the negative for them to latch onto. So for example, there's that old rule, you can't run by the pool, right? So stop running can be reframed as please walk, right? So they're hearing what you want them to do, instead of, typically if I say stop running, they're probably just gonna run because all they heard was run. Right? So that's also really helpful in giving directions, is just keeping it in the positive. And then one of the last things here is give warnings. So the way I can best explain this for myself and others is, imagine if you were watching your favorite TV show, right? And I go over and I turn off the TV and I say, it's time for dinner. You're like, what? I was just in a really good part, or whatever is happening. So giving warnings can be really key, right? So in 2 more minutes, it's going to be time to turn off the TV and get ready for dinner. In 1 more minute, it'll be ready for dinner time. We'll be ready for dinner time, right? And so I've noticed that with younger kids, the more warnings, the better. In fact, I'll try to remind at least 3 times. And you can be loose with the time frame. 5 minutes might actually be like 2 minutes. Typically, they're not really noticing that whole thing. So I don't feel like you need to, okay, I have to time for 5 minutes. No pressure on yourself, just really giving the warnings and some space in between each warning. And then the last thing here, did you want to say something, Rach?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No,
the last thing here is just remember to allow for wait time when redirecting. So instead of, it's time to wash up for dinner, then they're not doing it right then, allow for some time. Depending on the age of the child, it actually may take longer for them to process your direction, right? Because that's just how the brain is growing right then. So you saying it might take, 30 seconds or so for them to really get it. Okay, that's what I need. This is what I need to do. So just allowing for wait time just means, give the direction and then wait. So we're gonna do a little role play, and just to set it up for you, Rachel's gonna be the child and I'm gonna be the adult. And I wanna give the disclaimer that we're very aware that this is probably not normally how this happens. You'll probably be like, well, my child doesn't do that quickly. And the point is that we just wanna model as many strategies as possible, not to say that it's gonna be this quick or this easy, or that you would be doing all the things that I do at the same time, right? Really, the goal of this is to model it so that you can see it in action. And again, just know that it may take 5 times as long as we're doing it right now. Or you might just use one of the things that I do with your child. So the scene is Rachel's the child, she's 8 years old, and she's been taking a break from her schoolwork, her math work, and she is working on her iPad, right? And while I'm doing this, see if you can pick out some of the things that we were just discussing to connect it to what I'm modeling. Okay, Rachel, you have about 1 more minute on your iPad until we go back to math.
No.
I know it's hard to stop your game, but it's time to get back to work soon.
No.
First, we finish math, then you can play your game again.
Fine.
Thank you for listening and being flexible.
Yeah, whatever.
I know that was hard. Let's wipe that off. That felt kind of icky. Can you wipe off your arm? Come on, it's fun. Let me wipe your arm off for you. Can I get your head?
Oh, fine.
All right, end scene.
So separate, oh, go ahead, Margo.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so I'm curious what you all noticed was done there. And again, that's a very abbreviated version of what likely would have happened in that scene. But what did you notice that we went over? And you can use the chat feature to share that we modeled. Yeah, breathing first, then. stop, breathe, think. Yeah, the warning, right? The positive praise, shake it off, wipe it off. Yeah, I actually took a deep breath when she said no, like the second or third time, so that my lid didn't flip. Tone of voice, nice. Yeah.
And we didn't chat about that explicitly, but I think tone of voice is a really important piece of this, that, you know, even during that repair work, right, of just saying, hey, I know my voice got pretty up there, you know, or I know my lid flipped and I got pretty angry right then. But when you're doing that repair work, or when possible in the moment, using that breath, right, to really, you know, help our voice get down. So even when our words maybe aren't perfect, or we get a little, you know, blunt with it, right, we're able to still keep that kind of same level of voice, because that's really, again, with the glass, you know, circle, really helping to bring your child's calm and regulation down to meet you as well when they're maybe up here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, thanks for bringing up the tone of voice too, because if I were to get louder with Rachael, right, she may actually flip her lid just because of the tone of my voice. So then she may have escalated in her behavior might have gotten worse, or she would have started yelling at me, right? And that goes back to Rachel's diagram of like, if we start to flip our lid, then our child's gonna flip their lid with us.
And you have a very loud shouting match in your home, right? Which is not a helpful piece of self-care, I think, for anyone, you know. All right, Margo, we'll go back to the slide.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so brain breaks. Okay, so if you've heard of a brain break before, awesome. If you haven't, really all this means is a break from maybe using one side of our brain, meaning like if we're engaged in schoolwork, we may need a break from engaging in schoolwork, just like we do if we're working at our jobs, right? We may need a break from that, go outside, engage the other side of our brain of, you know, talk to a friend or have a drink of water or whatever it is. Some really great brain breaks are, these are certainly not all of them, but we chose to focus on body and breath.
So with Go Noodle is just one resource that we offered here. And, you know, these links will be live in the PowerPoint we send out. For the sake of time, I'll let you all check out some of these on your own. But Go Noodle is a free website, and it has videos specific to kids of a variety of ages that help us dance, stretch, and sing. So, you know, even when you're having a moment of like, I do not have another game or activity planned in my kid's day, you know, or I've exhausted my list of, you know, things that I had planned, but I'm noticing my kid is really maybe almost on the verge of lid flipping, or their energy level is so high. These are great tools to use just to, as Margo said, you know, help regulate, help bring the calm back into your home, and just waking up, you know, both sides of that brain. I also love a freeze dance video that, you know, has kids dance and then freeze. And I find that that kind of just wakes up that brain of, you know, I am getting really excited in the dancing part, but I also have to pause, breathe, and freeze with the video. And it's kind of like a fun, humorous way to engage your kids in that kind of game.
And then waking up both sides of the brain. I mentioned this before of, you know, left side of our brain is really focusing on academics or sort of that upstairs part where we were talking about before, and then right side's more creative connection. And so if we want to kind of balance both sides of the brain, this is an activity, I see my body a little better, of a butterfly hug. So you can do it with me if you want to, where you're literally just crossing at your wrist and you're tapping each side of the body. Okay, and so you're literally just waking up, just call it like waking up both sides of the brain, waking up both sides of the body. You can go as slow or as fast as you want. And I've even done this before, especially it's really nice if you practice affirmation or you have a faith that you may like say something together as a family, to say it while you're doing this. right? So I might say, I am loved, you are loved, I am safe, I am strong, right? Whatever it is. It's a really nice, like, kind of rhythm to the affirmation that you're sharing. And I did want to share too that with that this is kind of more like little kids, right? And so with older kids, you can use this. I use this specifically in my personal meditation. If I'm noticing, my go-to is a mantra of I am in control and I'm feeling out of control. And you can use it by tapping your fingers word by word, right? So I am in control. I am in control. I am in control, right? So it's a nice way. You can do it with the breath too. It might be a lot, but it's a nice way to do that as well, to keep your mind and body working together.
Margo and I also created a handout that is linked here, and we'll practice at the end of the slide, just called ABC's Movement Game, but pretty much just a sheet that has letters and then different exercises kind of associated with each letter. And you could invite yourself or your child to spell their name. And so, you know, if R is, you know, do 10 jumping jacks, then I would start with doing that as a part of my name and work through it. But we'll try that again together at the end of the slide.
And the last thing we have here is yoga. So if you like using yoga, it's actually Go Noodle has some really good yoga videos as well. If you're like, I don't really know how to do it, but I want to try it, there's some great YouTube videos out there as well. And then you can actually look up, I'll see if I can link it to the email. There's just like kid-friendly poses that you can just do a pose or two together, right? In my last training, I actually took us through some chair yoga. So a lot of the movements that we'll do, and some of them are in the ABC movement game, you can just do seated. So you don't have to stand up. It's really, it's meant to be accessible for everyone. So, and then, oh, sorry, did you want to do, should we do care now or should we do it after breath?
We could do care now, you think?
Okay. Oh, or did we want, yeah, let's do care now and then we'll come back to breath. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
All right, so this is the document. Can you see that, Margo? Did that pop up? Mm-hmm. So we'll share this out with you all, but I think we're going to invite you to help us spell care if you want to get your brain in. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we'll do care and I'll model it. So you probably won't need to see me, but I'll model it and then you can do it with me if you'd like. Okay, and these are all going to be in our seat. So if you look at C, it's 3 figure 8s with your arms crossing your body. So like this. Yeah, really good. Cool. A, take 3 big deep breaths. Okay, R, stretch to the stars, so reach up and we'll lean right and then we'll lean left. Awesome. And then E, take a seated forward fold. So you'll actually just be in your chair, you're just gonna fold over your legs. You'll stop seeing me in just a second and reach for your toes with a fold. Come back up when you feel ready. So that's just an example of one word you could spell, right? But you can get really creative. I got this idea because I do some workouts with friends, and this is adapted from a document that I had seen one of them share for adults. So we adapted it to meet children, and they were spelling like quarantine and coronavirus and whatever. You can get fun with it. You don't have to do your name. Just something that's fun for you all. I think a piece of that too is when you talk about waking up both sides of the brain, Margo, is like even that figure 8 movement, you know, anything where your arms or your legs are able to cross the center body line, that's engaging both parts of your brain and helping maybe to wake up and and also to calm as well.
Perfect. And then we'll go over that last part on breath. So I'm gonna, is it, oh, the finger breathing lost its little, got it. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about 3 more. The finger breathing is the one that I did in the beginning. Okay, the 4 breaths. Okay, and then the take 5, probably many of you have seen this. I'm actually gonna, if you wanna do this with me, you're welcome to. If you take your palm in one of your fingers, you're gonna trace each finger as we take 5 deep breaths. So deep breath in, deep breath out. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, come back to the wrist. Now let's get even slower with our breath. Our last 2 breaths, really slow. Trace the ring finger. Exhale, come back down. Good, 1 more breath, super slow. And exhale, release. You can shake out your hand if it tickled a little bit. This is actually nice to do too with your own child. So you can ask if you can trace their hand as they take deep breaths, and it kind of helps them to stay a little more focused on taking the breaths with you. And obviously there's the nice piece of the physical touch. Okay, bumblebee breath. This is one of my favorites. So this is buzzing like a bee. I'll demo it, but the reason why I love it so much is actually I teach yoga as well. I invite people in class to do this, so this isn't like just for kids, even though it's supposed to buzz like a bee. You're making a humming noise when you do it, right? So you can actually feel the vibration on the back of your throat, which the vibration on the back of your throat regulates your downstairs brain, right? The upstairs brain kind of gives it a hug. So I was kind of joking with a colleague that when I get stressed, I don't even realize it sometimes that I'm actually humming to myself. And that's probably just my body's way of remembering that humming helps me to feel better. So bumblebee breath, deep breath in. With your lips closed, you're just gonna buzz like a bee. Cool, it's one of my favorites. And then belly breathing. Belly breathing is really just focusing on taking breath in and out through the belly as opposed to the chest. So oftentimes we may even notice that we walk around and we're breathing and maybe our shoulders are moving and our whole chest is moving. There's not as much space for us to take in and oxygen out through our chest as there is in our belly. So if we bring our awareness to our belly and we try and blow it up like a balloon as we inhale, and then we exhale, bring the balloon back in, we're just gonna get more oxygen. And the longer and bigger the breath, the more regulating it is, right? The more calming it is. So that breathing video is the one from Kaufman. You may have heard it before, where he's rapping about belly breathing and kind of sharing that. It's really good. It's about 2.5 minutes for younger kids, typically.
So I'm thinking, Margo, maybe we can circle back to Amanda's video if we have time.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, so we do have, which is just looks like a black box now, but it'll go out in the PowerPoint, and we'll, if we have time at the end, or we can stay on a little longer for folks who don't have to run right at 2:15. But our colleague Amanda Lynch did a meditation and breathing video with her daughter who's 5, and we thought it was just a great example of how parents can adapt some of these skills to do in like an age appropriate way with their kids. So we'll send that out to you all too. Let's see. Okay. So I also just wanted to briefly touch on a tool that I really like, especially for little kids, but I think also as an adult, me making this video was really calming for me. So sensory bins are really just any material that you put into a container that it can help you sort of engage in like a sensory experience. Pushing, squeezing, finding, exploring. I linked the video that I created here for Greater Richmond Scan, but in the bottom right, you'll see that I pretty much just made my own sand out of flour, some oil and breadcrumbs and a little bit of cornstarch. And pretty much I just put that into a plastic container, and it kind of acts almost like that kinetic sand a lot of kids use at school, or if you've ever been to into a store that sells kinetic sand. But you can create out of household ingredients with not too many supplies at all. A little goes a long way. And it really just helps to offer that kind of brain break of, breathing, squeezing, and also kind of like making your own little story, your own little, creation inside of, that container. I have a camel here in this clip where I was just helping him travel across the desert, right? And so, bringing that kind of play to the idea, both for adults who enjoy play, but also for kids of, different ages, while also kind of incorporating those senses as well. I think we're going to pause for a second, or I might just ask folks to do this maybe while we're on the screen, if that's cool, Margo, so we can move forward. But, we've talked about this in previous self-care training as well, about the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding tool. And if you all aren't familiar with that, that's really just using all 5 of your senses to think about, what is in your current environment. So what are 5 things that I can see, 4 things that I can touch, and kind of going down the list in that way. We kind of came up with a few just adapted ones here, because sometimes it's a lot for both kids and grownups to kind of spend time going through each one. But kind of just having some of these in your back pocket of your mind of, I'm feeling like a lot of things are happening right now. I'm getting trapped up in the chaos of the media, actual life, those paper tigers. I'm going to pause and I'm going to name, 5 things that are red in the room, or 3 things that are touching my body right now. And what that really is what we would call in, the clinical world is a grounding technique, right? A way to ground yourself in your current environment. And remember that right now, hopefully in this moment, you are safe and you are connected to the physical world around you. So for a moment, I would like you all just to take that breath, and we'll try to name 3 things that are touching your body. So you could do that out loud in the chat, or just in your mind of naming and or writing 3 things that are touching your body right now. Great. So thank you all for doing that. I hope that's helpful.
All right, we've got We've got 2 more slides. I know we're getting close to time. And so this last one is individual time. If we're talking about the structure of the day, this would be like, maybe like afternoon, after you've done a little homeschooling or whatever it is. And now it's time for you to just have that maybe separate or together, just downtime, whatever you want to do. I'll just invite that it's easier to do things that we know are good for ourselves if we decide to do them ahead of time. So what do I mean by that is really just that if you are like, okay, after this, I'm going to go for a walk, but then you forget, or that glass of wine is more accessible, then you're probably just going to go for the glass of wine, right? So really making a list of what you like to do to relax, so it's right there for you. I have this jar with sticks or pieces of paper where you can write ideas. You can just pull one from it if you're in that space. I don't know what I need right now, and I'll just, it says call a friend, cool, I'll do that. Just to have some individual time for yourself. And Rachel, you were going to mention about kids as well, I think.
Yeah, so I think the play therapist in both Margo and I is kind of like, play is super important. Kids should have a chance to play. And, just kind of saying that if you're able to kind of commit as much as you can right now to giving into that one-on-one time with your child during the morning time, or having that structured time of connection with them where we're not, partially answering emails while also attending to them. If we could give that directed time with them that's focused, that hopefully by the afternoon or sometime later in the day, this opportunity for individual downtime will feel more possible. And during that time, encouraging your child to create their play ideas, definitely looking at various resources, and Margo and I can continue to share those with you all, through Greater Richmond Scan and various, resources that are being put out right now of, how can you create your own story or your own, sensory bin where you play out your story, and have that be an independent activity for your child. So even for 20 minutes, you can take something out of that, jar of, ideas for yourself and have that for your moment. Nothing will probably feel like enough right now due to, so many of us living in this time of crisis, but just allowing yourself to have that moment of downtime and helping your child understand that they have cool ideas that you would love to see after they play them on their own, right? First you create your idea, then I will love to look at them after, right? So really incorporating kind of all of those skills that we've chatted about earlier.
Awesome.
Anything else you wanted to add to this piece?
Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah, and I think for caregiver ideas, I just listed, we listed a few of those there. A lot of parents that I'm working right now are like, the most I can do right now during my downtime is doing the laundry, and even that it feels productive, at least for me, but it's independent, and I can feel proud that I'm kind of doing that piece of my, housework. But also I can kind of think about, just have some positive thoughts that I'm putting through my head during that time, or doing that grounding activity of like, as I fold my laundry, I'm counting each fold, right? Or feeling the texture of my sheets as I fold them, right? So kind of, incorporating some of those ideas, even though it's not the ideal like spa day, self-care, it's a moment of just you being with yourself, during that time. So we're going to briefly just touch on attunement, and attunement is really, we hear it probably a lot with, young infants when, we talk about, the child giving, being attuned to a caregiver's needs and vice versa. And here we have like the picture of the eye contact, right? So kind of that marveling for an infant of, wow, you're so beautiful, you're so special. And what we know is that during a time of crisis and where, we may all have those, paper tigers, real tigers, and wondering about our feelings of safety, it's almost more important than ever to make sure we reaffirm for our child that we're connected to them, we're connected to their feelings, and we're going to keep them safe. So here we're going to offer just some quick strategies that we actually pulled from our therapeutic work, with like a TheraPlay technique is what it's called formally, but these can be adapted both for like at the evening time before bed to kind of give that sort of connecting moment and repair moment, especially if it's been a harder day. But they can also be kind of peppered in throughout the day as well.
So the first one is probably my favorite. It's the weather report. So this is a little bit hard for me to demo since I'm alone. But what you might do is ask your child to turn around so that their back is facing you, okay? And then say, I'm gonna draw the weather on your back of what I think the weather's gonna be today or tomorrow, and I want you to guess what I'm drawing. So I might first start by just using my hands to kind of clear the slate. I'm just gonna rub their back a little bit, right? And then I might use my fingers and do this on their back, the rain, right? Or I might use my palms and pound on their back a little bit, not too hard, right? Just a little pound, pound, pound. And, or maybe I might do this, which could mean sunshine, right? And they're gonna guess what they think I think the weather is gonna be. And they could do that with you. And it's really nice because it's obviously a game for them, but it also then incorporates that touch and that attachment that sometimes is really needed, that physical touch for attunement.
And, some caregivers may feel more or less comfortable with touch, or some children may feel more or less comfortable with touch. So it's also, you know, kind of picking and choosing out of all of these techniques, but these ones especially, of, you know, what best fits my relationship with my child or the children that I'm working with. I think so many kids just love that like safe touch that a caregiver can offer, you know, so that game can be really fun, just as a new way to connect at the end of the day. Another one that's just verbal is a game that I like to play with the clients that I work with who are little ones, called Peanut Butter Jelly. For this, you use, the adult can start with saying peanut butter in a silly voice, and then the child mimics that voice, to kind of go back and forth. So Margo, maybe we can just practice that real quick if you're cool with that. So if I went like peanut butter
Jelly.
Peanut butter
Jelly.
peanut butter.
Jelly.
So it like always makes me laugh. It makes most of the kids laugh, that I work with. And even when you're having that, like, yeah, almost stuck in the mud, like, like it's been a hard day, or like we've had a lot of fighting between the two of us today. It's kind of just a nice attunement activity. Like, I'm going to reconnect to you. I'm going to repair with you, or just connect, and kind of play that game. And a lot of kids love to flip it back and say, well, I'm going to do the voices now. And so being, you know, flexible with that too. That also relates to mirroring. A lot of, you know, Simon Says games, or, you know, match my hands, you know, going up and down. If you all right now are doing some more virtual conversations with extended family or friends during that time, that can be kind of a fun way to attune to maybe people that you're not seeing in person, even as adults, to just say like, let's match each other. It's so silly, I think, but you feel kind of connected through that, you know, shared movement and shared experience.
And I know we have a couple minutes, so if you have to get off, feel free obviously to get off. We'll stay on for a little bit. We'll finish this slide, and then we'll be available for questions, but I just want to acknowledge the time. So the other cool thing about stuff like peanut butter jelly, or the grounding one too, is that they're really nice redirection. So if you notice your child like starting to flip their lid, you might say, oh, let's take a deep breath. Can you name 5 things in here that are red? Or how about we play peanut butter jelly? You know, it actually like just focuses their mind back in their brain in a different way. So you're here, and then, okay, we're back to connection, and we're giving our downstairs brain a hug. Rituals are a nice way to create structure throughout the day. So a hello goodbye ritual is another Becky Bailey thing. So this could just be simply with school teachers. I'll often offer, you know, saying hello or goodbye with your students, of a hug, high five, or a handshake, right? But you may have some really personal things in your family that you like to use as a hello or a goodbye.
And handshakes are great too, right? Like, you know, creative handshakes, right, are so fun, I think, as a hello goodbye ritual too. Yeah, and so story time is a great time at night as well, to kind of reestablish that safety, but also connection through a story. So, you know, taking that time to either, if you have an older child, for them to read you a story. I know there's like the popcorn method for kids who can read, where say, you know, I'll read a line and then you pop it back to me, and then you'll, you know, then I'll read a line, you know, vice versa, kind of changing lines. For kids who are not at, you know, reading age yet, just, you know, being able to like marvel at a story, right? And, you know, finding that time when possible to carve out, you know, 10, 15 minutes, if even, just to like flip through a book and not rush through it, right? Or, you know, pause a book and say, oh, like they're feeling pretty scared in this book. I wonder what they could do right now to feel a bit better, right? So, you know, using stories as a way, a less confrontational way, right, for your kid to kind of think about, when that character got angry in that book, they could have taken a deep breath, right? Or you could even say, whoa, that character flipped their lid. So it's almost kind of trying to weave in some of those ideas that, you know, you're practicing and reflecting through story characters, you know, what's happening with their feelings in the moment.
And I touched already on mantras, so I won't say much about that other than they can be really helpful and that they can change every day, right? So you may have one that you use all the time as a family or with a one person in a dyad, or you may just want to say, what's our mantra for today? Almost like setting an intention for our day.
And lastly, just, giving that good, that kind noticing to children right now is really helping, again, to kind of connect with them and reestablish safety. A very basic, therapy technique is just having a child look in a mirror with the caregiver and say, and the caregiver being, wow, I see your kind face, your cool hair, your bright smile, right? Excuse me. And doing that noticing in the sense where, you're not maybe only looking at the superficial pieces, right? But I see those listening ears. I see those, shining bright eyes, right? And connecting with them through giving them that positive attention that we talked about earlier. This also relates to giving good care through, boo-boo checks, Band-Aids. A lot of caregivers I'm working right now are saying, oh, my kid keeps saying that, they have all these boo-boos that I need to look at, right? Well, we're in a time, right, where we're talking about health, sickness, a virus, so much more than we may typically, that kids may be showing, their stress through saying, hey, I want you to look at me to make sure I'm okay. Or are you okay? Because you just coughed, right? Are you sure you're not sick? So, being attuned to that idea of that underlying feeling of, am I safe right now? And, before it gets a lid flipping sort of stressful, feeling, noticing preemptively throughout the day or even at the end of the day, wow, you are such a special person, right? I think that even touches me, right? When I hear that from friends, coworkers, and family. So being able to connect like that with your child can be really helpful and also fill us up really well, because so many kids will give it right back in a great way of, oh, you're the best parent ever, or I love you, right? And it's just that good feeling to kind of end a day, even when that day has maybe had a lot of challenges during it.
So that's the end of our slide deck and our presentation. Really hope that it was useful. Please let us know if you have a question right now. If you want to share in the chat, I have a question, and then we can kind of call on you, or you can write your question and we can answer them. Otherwise, you'll get an email after this that says, I think are we doing an evaluation, Rachel?
Yeah, I have one as well. And it will also have a certificate of attendance of it. So any folks who are needing that for work or, other reasons, you'll be able to download the certificate and have that available to you after you take the evaluation. So we would love for your feedback. So please do take it if you can make the time.
And then someone just asked how they get on the email list. So we actually just shared this out into multiple listservs, but if our main one is if you, trying to think who could they email, Rachel? If you email one of us, we can give your, and I'll put my email down here, we'll give your email to Greater Richmond Scans listserv, and so you'll get all of our emails with all of our resources, including trainings like this.
And if you register for this training, we will have your email. So that's where the follow-up email will go. But if you don't receive that, or if you, aren't using a certain email connected to this account, then feel free to email Margo or myself. I'll put my email here too. And you all are welcome to, reach out to either of us and we can send that to you.
And if you can't see the chat, if you go on the bottom of your screen and click chat, then you'll actually see it pull up, hopefully on your right side, if you can't see it. Someone just asked that. And if you can't, just let us know, we can help you. I hope that this was helpful, and I'm so glad that you all were here. Thank you for joining us, and please be well and keep taking care of yourselves and each other.
Yeah.